That said, people are already asking who we would like to see Ohio State face in the playoffs. How about Kansas State? They would be I'd like to see them maybe, I don't know, Missouri? See them in the playoffs? That would be good. I don't know. Does anybody care at this point? Michigan State, Michigan, Wisconsin. Probably. That's a lot to get through. So.
Yeah, you got to get through those three first, obviously. I mean, and it's a I was on a show today in Oregon, and they were like, do Ohio State people care that Oregon is ranked ahead of Ohio State? And I'm like, well, they beat them at Ohio State Stadium on the road, and you have to give them credit for that. But I think Ohio State can reel them in over the next several weeks because they're going to play number 7, number 6, and now Wisconsin has snuck all the way up to number 15 in the playoff rankings or thereabouts. So that's going to be much better than what Oregon's going to face. And Oregon's got a tough game with Utah this week, where I saw Utah is favored over Oregon at Utah, which seems somewhat weird. I mean, but Oregon really hasn't been all that impressive, in the 8 weeks since they beat Ohio State. So I don't know. It's going to be it's all going to come out in the wash. I know you hate that, Mark, that it's all going to work out when it works out, or whatever it was I said that really upset you a couple of weeks ago with my dismissive tone. But
so you're going to upset me intentionally again.
Football is going to be played, and the winners are going to move on, and the losers are going to go to the Losers Bowl, and that's how it is. That's how it's
Steve,
always
do you want to give you the 57 different scenarios where it will not work itself out?
Go ahead.
So the one thing I will say, yes, the Michigan State, Ohio State situation, that will work itself out because they're all playing. That will work itself out. And there are other like situations around the country, but the whole thing may not work itself out.
Yeah, what we know is there can't be a three-way tie between Michigan, Michigan State, and Ohio State because there just can't be. There can be a two-way tie between any of those three with one loss, but there can't be a three-way tie. So the head-to-head winner is going to advance of whoever's tied, if there is a tie at the end, is going to advance to Indianapolis, or Ohio State's just going to win these next two and win it outright and go on to Indianapolis and face who we presume is Wisconsin. Although I think if Minnesota wins out and beats Wisconsin, maybe they would have the upper hand in that. I don't know, but it's going to be interesting. I think we got some great football coming up on paper, it seems, and we'll just see if the games play out to our expectations.
Mark, a few minutes. Yeah, I was just going to say, to answer Steve's last point there, I have worked on division scenarios, championship race scenarios. So I got the Big Ten West right in front of me, but I'm going to produce a video to sort all that out. The most bizarre path is Purdue. They need to win out. They need Wisconsin to lose 2. They need Iowa to lose 1, and they need Minnesota to lose, but Minnesota can't lose to Wisconsin. They need to lose to Indiana this week. That's the Purdue path to Indianapolis.
Well, they ain't going because Minnesota is going to beat Indiana like 50-10 because Indiana is completely – they've done everything but put the helmets and the shoulder pads away. I don't know.
That's the only way Indiana is going to keep Purdue out of the Big Ten championship game is by losing to Minnesota rather than beating Purdue.
Yeah.
But Mark, I just want to say it will work itself out when the committee gets together and they decide that head-to-head is acceptable for 2 teams and not acceptable for 2 other teams. That works itself out, Mark. That's exactly what we're talking about. It's simple. I don't know why you get all up in arms.
I do get up in arms like nothing else. This is the thing that gets me. So now that we've taken it down the playoff rankings path, I made this analogy, and if I made it here, somebody shut me up before I continue it, but I made it one other time that if I'm $50,000 in credit card debt and I keep getting bills sent to my mailbox and they keep stacking up, but I don't have the money to pay it, it's going to work itself out. Somebody's going to come drag me off somewhere and throw me in jail eventually. It'll work itself out. That's going to be the conclusion. So Tony,
CFP jail.
Here's the deal, is that Oregon, for people like me that want to honor the head-to-head, it's never been so difficult than it is now. This has challenged my stance on head-to-head like nothing else, because if the committee wants to honor Ohio State's resume, they could have done it the first week. They could have said, well, this is better already. They can pull that trigger at any time. There's no magical formula. It could be the Michigan State game could be enough to say, we're going to pass them by. Or they could never do it and say, Oregon, we're going to honor the head-to-head as long as they're both 12-1. But that's created the logjam or the conundrum. I never use that word, because if you're honoring the head-to-head, you either say, we think Ohio State's this good and they need to be as high as possible, therefore we're placing Oregon in front of them, and then we've got to place all these other teams behind them. Or you say, you use Oregon as your starting point and say, they're really not that good, so we're going to place them back here behind Cincinnati, Michigan, Michigan State, and others, and then Ohio State's got to be placed behind them in the back of the line. So that's where we stand right now.
Well, on the teleconference with Gary Barta and the CFP committee last night, the last week, Barta cited the fact that Oregon and Ohio State had similar wins that week. They were good, they weren't impressive, and so they went back to the head-to-head for those two teams. This week, it was, Ohio State had a good win. Oregon won at home against Washington State, but really not enough separation, so they went back to the head-to-head again, even though Ohio State had a much more a better win over a ranked opponent, more emphatic, but they still went back to that head-to-head. And this week they also were talking about Alabama, Oregon, and Ohio State and trying to put them in the right order. So now Oregon and Ohio State have invoked Alabama in the committee's eyes. So obviously, as Gary Barta said, we didn't learn much about Alabama, but they still like them most. And it just, I think here eventually they cited Ohio State's wins. Their best wins were Penn State, Purdue, Minnesota. Oregon just has a better win right now also, and it's over Ohio State. And they also have a Fresno State win, which is like Ohio State's other wins. And they have a UCLA win, which is like Ohio State's other win. So the problem with Ohio State right now is they didn't play Ohio State, and Oregon did. Now, moving forward, they're going to play more teams like Ohio State. They're going to play Michigan State. If they beat them, that will be a better win than anything Oregon has, except for Ohio State. But it will now raise Ohio State up more. They beat Michigan, going to raise them up even more. So I believe they will, if they don't pass Oregon, if they beat Michigan State, I think they will pass Oregon. And if they don't, they will certainly pass them after they beat Michigan. And this is assuming like Oregon has to go on the road and win at Utah. So that might be a good enough win to keep Oregon where they are. But again, it just also comes down to what they want, because we saw that with Michigan State when Michigan State beats them, and they were already talking that week, who is better between these two teams? There's no way to tell.
Yeah, my belief on how this was all supposed to work was that the head-to-head was when you were comparing two teams that were very similar. Well, apparently they don't think Michigan and Michigan State are very similar because they threw head-to-head out the window on that one. But when you look at Ohio State and Oregon, apparently they're saying that they are very similar teams. And okay, let me get my Reynolds Wrap hat and put it on right now about how Penn State couldn't get itself ranked even when it was close, and how Purdue did not stay in the rankings, falling from 19 out at this point. But all hail that 6-4 Mississippi State team that's there for whatever reason. But I think so many people are they're just going crazy about the head-to-head when that isn't supposed to be the first metric. The first metric of their charter is not supposed to be, let's look at the head-to-head, and then we'll go from there. That's, it's supposed to be something to help differentiate two teams that are so similar that you're really trying to find something to be able to put one on a line above the other one. And, there just seems to be this misinformation campaign that that the first metric is head to head when it really shouldn't be. When you sit there and you look at what a Big Ten schedule is, and I'm the first one to admit it. Ohio State, they played some guys, but their schedule is backloaded. Michigan State and Michigan, and then whatever a Big Ten championship game would be if they get into it. That's the meat of the schedule at that point. But lordy, the Pac-12 schedule is Charmin soft.